Alright, hello everybody. So this is Haven and we are going to be starting lesson number 2 in our Blender for Beginners series. I do want to encourage everyone who is watching this to get out a notepad and a pen. Do not do one online. Don't make yourself a copy in a notepad on your computer. You want one that you can look at next to your keyboard. I even suggest if you have post-it pads that as I go through shortcut keys, I want you to write those down on a post-it pad and stick them to the outside of your monitor. It gives you a really quick and easy way to look at what you need to look at. Or on a pad of paper on your desktop next to you so you can easily look through the list. Please, whatever you do not go to any of the websites that say, oh look, we have a cheat sheet for Blender. We have all of the shortcut keys that you need. I even saw somebody giving away in group a link for a photo of Blender shortcuts. This thing is very confusing even if you know Blender. In the time that it's going to take you to locate what you need, it's going to take you 10 times as long as it will to looking down on your list to pick from what you already know. You do not need to know all of those things at the beginning. And like I said, when you become experienced in Blender, you won't need that sheet at all. I think it's a very bad idea to even think about using one of these. I want you to learn Blender. I don't want you to look at a cheat sheet and get confused by it. I mean, how can you look for something that you don't even know what you're looking for? So again, I want you to pull up a pad of paper and write these down. The first two shortcut keys that we have, we actually learned in the first video. And those were T and N. And what I'm going to do is let me go ahead and I am going to put these down for you so that you can see them. This is as easy as you need to make your notes. T is for the Tool Options panel, N is for the Properties panel. You could put these two on a post-it pad and stick it right to the corner of your monitor just outside the screen. It's that simple. And again, as you learn your shortcut keys and add them to what you've even written down on a notepad, it will make sense to you. You will be able to easily find what you need to know. So we've learned about the interface. I'm done with my preaching on that. I'm a strong believer in it. So in our first lesson, we learned about the interface and our preferences. Basically what we see when we look at our screen. It's not so foreign. We don't have, like zero clue about what we're looking at. Let's go ahead and get around inside of our 3D viewport a little bit. And if you remember, that's the center window now, right there where our cube is. By default, we do have some items here inside of our 3D viewport. We have a camera, we have a light, and we have a cube. Now in all reality, we don't want any of this in our scene to begin with. We want a nice, fresh, clean scene to open up every time. Chances are you're going to end up deleting this stuff every time you come into Blender because really you don't need them for basic modeling, and you're probably not always going to start off with just a cube when you model. Alright, so the first thing that we need to do is to be able to make selections. So to select things, you simply right mouse click on them. Right mouse clicking on any one item will select it. When you click on a second thing, the first thing will become unselected. And you will notice that no matter what your theme is, it will have a very distinguishable outline on it. You can see here that this is outlined in orange. Now let's say you wanted to select two things. Well, we can often think about our Shift key as a plus or a minus button. So if we hold Shift and right click on a second item, they are now both selected. Shift and right click on the camera, we now have all three things selected. Shifting and right-clicking on something that is selected will, of course, deselect it. All right? Right-click, select, right-click with your Shift button to add selection. If it is added, right-click while shifting, deselects it. So you have all of your items selected. Now you can actually go ahead and use another shortcut key, which is A. If anything is selected in your scene and you hit the A key, everything that's selected will become deselected. If everything in your scene is deselected and you hit the A key, it all becomes selected. So A is a select all or deselect all choice depending on what is or isn't selected already. I want you to hit A and have it all selected. Remember again, your mouse must be in the window that you want to use the action in. We want to use the A select all in our 3D viewport, so that's where your mouse needs to be. A lot of times people will say something's not working, it's not working, and their mouse will just simply be off to the side, just enough to where it's not going to work with the shortcut key, okay? Now before we do this, I want to tell you about something called menus. Menus are things that we get floating inside of our 3D viewport sometimes, depending on the different keys that we use. One of those keys is our deselect, our delete. Your next shortcut key that you should write down is delete equals delete key or X key. Or you can write down that delete or X key equals delete. So it doesn't matter which one you click. I believe on a Mac there is no delete key, so you must use your X. So here is my delete key and I get a menu. You will notice that if I move my mouse away, that menu disappears. If I hit delete anywhere in this window, the menu shows up where the arrow or the cursor is, my mouse is. So delete shows up over there. Delete shows up over here. No matter where you're at, that's where the menu comes up. Something that's really confusing to a lot of people are the menus themselves. Often menus will change depending on what you're doing. I want you to make special note that this delete menu now has only one choice on it. We'll talk about what happens to it later on, but remember, one choice on this delete menu right now. You'll also wonder, why doesn't it just delete? It's asking you to confirm your deletion. When you do things to mesh inside of Blender, you have to confirm everything. You're talking to Blender. You have a selection. You told Blender, select this item. This is what I want to work with. Now, this is what I want to do. I want to delete it. So I pull up a delete menu. Blender wants to make sure that it understands me. Are you sure that this is what you want to do? You want to delete it, right? And you simply click delete to confirm that that's what you want to do. All of our tools inside of Blender, well, I should say almost all of them, need confirmation. You need to confirm that that's what you want to do. Also, you cannot do anything to anything if it's not selected. So if I don't choose my light right now, I cannot delete it. Blender has no idea what I want deleted if I hit the button and nothing's selected. So I can now right click on my lamp and I can hit delete again. Or I can use my A to select all of it, hit my delete key, and confirm that action. So now everything is deleted. So those are some important things. Now what we also need to know how to do is how to get around inside of our Blender. We need to know how to look at what we want, how to look at different sides of it. We can't model everything from one view because we're working with a 3D object in a 3D program. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit Control Z, which is your next shortcut key. Control Z is undo. That means what I just did last, I want you to forget I ever did that and go back to the step before that. As in our interface video in the preferences, we set that to 256. That means we can step back 256 times. Now, when you're stepping back, it's really easy to step back too many steps. So let's say we've done 50 steps and we want to go back, 40 of them, but as we're hitting that Control Z, we go one step or two steps too far. Well, if you then use Control Shift Z, you can redo the undo. So, oops, my mistake, Blender, you went back too far. Blender will redo that undo so that you can, not have it undone anymore. So that's a really good thing. So make sure that you write those down as well. Now, in order to get around inside of our scene, we need to do what's called camming or panning or zooming. Let me go ahead and show you first those three things, or those things that I had you set in your preferences. I am going to go to my preferences and I'm going to turn off the actions that I had you turn on. So now, in order to cam around something, to cam around your scene, orbit around it, you use your right mouse button, your middle mouse button, and as you push down on it and you move your mouse around, it orbits around your scene. So you can see all different sides and all different angles of it. If you use your Shift button, so hold down Shift while you push and hold your middle mouse, you can now pan. So camming is looking around in 3D, and panning is kind of like moving things around in 2D. Okay? So there you go. Now, zooming, you can simply just use your scroll wheel. Scroll in and out, in and out. There you go. Just goes closer and further from your view. Alright? If you don't have a middle mouse wheel, you can use the plus and the minus keys on your number pad to scroll in and scroll out in your scene. Now, when you cam around like this, do you see that your object kind of goes all over the place? My cube is selected, but when I cam around, it kind of goes everywhere. It doesn't stay the center of the scene, which can make it a little bit difficult to model this if you just want to rotate around your selection. So now let me go ahead and I'm going to turn rotate around selection back onto my preferences like I had you do. Now, when I cam around, do you see it staying centered? I can come here, move my scene in, and now I can cam around it, and that cube is staying in the center of my scene. It's staying focused where it was at. So it's much easier to work on and see from all different sides. Now, you see my mouse up here on the upper left right corner? When I zoom in or out here, the whole scene just comes closer to me or further from me. But if I turn on the zoom to mouse position in my preferences, my mouse is over here on my cube, and when I zoom in like this, it comes closer to me, or it goes further away. So the point that my cursor is at will be the focus of my zooming in and out. If I zoom in, I'm going to zoom in to this area. If I zoom out, everything zooms out to that position. Again, I can zoom in here, zoom out, zoom in, zoom out. So it's another way of manipulating your scene around, your zoom. It's a great way to use that tool. Another way of doing things inside a blender is to look at things from what are called straight views. And this is where our number pad comes in handy. On our number pad we have what are called straight views. If we hit the number 1 on our number pad, it will go into front view. That is looking into the green axis arrow. So front is here, back is there, and front view is going to let us look directly in this direction. So now I'm going to hit 1. You'll see that you really cannot see the green arrow anymore because you're looking directly into it, into the arrow. You will also notice here in the upper left corner of our viewport, we now have what's called front. We did have user, but hitting 1 tells us we are in the front view. We are looking along the x-axis here, or the y-axis, sorry. So, let me go ahead and hit that again. Okay, so now we do have the other views for the X and for the Z. So write down first, number pad 1 equals front view. Now if we use number pad 3, we get left side view. So now we're looking at our cube from its left side out its right side. Or right side view. Oh my goodness. Huh? So I'm looking like towards the right. Sorry. I had to sneeze. Sorry about that. Okay, so that is number pad 3. Number 3. That gives us our right side view. That's really odd because it used to give us our left side view, I thought. Alright, so now if we use the number pad 7, it gives us the top view. So now we're looking directly down onto our box. So again, 1, 3, and 7 give us our top, right, and front views. If we can look at our front, right, and top views, then we should be able to look at our back, left, and bottom views. And we can. Simply by holding Control, we can do the opposite. So if 1 is front view, Control 1 is back view. 3 is right view, so Control 3 is left view. 7 is top view, so Control 7 is bottom view. And that lets us look at it from all different straight views. The other thing that you're going to notice is that the word perspective is up here. Perspective means that everything is, well, in perspective. Things are larger as they're closer to you and smaller as they're further away from you. Now, a lot of people think that perspective view for modeling is the best. It gives you the truest form or the truest view of what you're creating. That may be true in some cases, but in a lot of cases I find that it does this fisheye view of things, and it makes it a little difficult to see what you've got going on. Another thing that happens with perspective view is your camera can get locked, which means if you cam in too close to something while in perspective view, that your camera is not going to move. You'll see that you try to zoom out or cam away, and you really can't. Your camera is locked there. In order to get out of that locking, you have to go into what's called ortho view, orthogonal. You can get into ortho view by hitting 5 on your number pad. 5 is a toggle. It does go between ortho and perspective view. Now, ortho view is a very two-dimensional look at what's going on. You'll notice that my grid does not get smaller, the further away from me it goes. My cube does not get smaller in the back the further away it goes. So you have a different kind of building mesh to look at while you're modeling. And this is actually what I prefer. Another difference is that in perspective view, you end up having the grid basically underneath your cube. But if you go into ortho with a number pad view, 1, 3, or 7, you'll see that the grid is behind you. And as long as you stay in that perfect view with the number pad, this grid will remain behind you. It's pretty much unlimited. You can just keep going back and back and back until you're just really far out. You can also cam in closer and see that you've got your grids here as well. You can kind of see them inside of there. Alright. Also, in perspective view sometimes, if you're in there, let me go ahead and go to number 5, you can cam inside your object. You cannot cam inside your object in ortho view. So you notice when I snapped to ortho, it came out of the cube and I cannot zoom into it. And that's kind of one of the reasons that perspective would lock up on you inside a perspective view. Now the reason that I had to use that next option turned off in preferences, auto perspective, was because it would be if you had auto perspective on. So here I'm going to go into ortho view right now. And I have auto perspective turned on in my preferences. So now if I cam around, do you see what happened? It popped into perspective all by itself. And honestly, if I want to be in perspective view, I would rather hit the 5 than have Blender flip it into perspective for me all the time, and I'm constantly changing it back to ortho. So that's why we turned that particular option off in the preferences. Okay, so now something else to notice here is that this cursor moves. This is our 3D cursor. And a lot happens based on where this cursor is. It becomes a real good asset when we're modeling to have access to this cursor and doing things with it. But for the most part, you always want this cursor centered to your scene. So I'm going to go ahead and select all of these items, A for all, deselect, and confirm that. Now I want my cursor in the center, and actually clicking here with my left mouse button will move it there, but it's not perfectly centered. You'll never get it perfectly centered. See, the closest you get, it's never really where it needs to be. So what you can do though is hold your shift key and press your C. Okay, so let me come back out a little bit. So if I have my cursor here, shift and C will snap it perfectly to the center of your grid, and that's what you want. We will see this later on, but trust me that if when you go to add an object, the center of the cursor is where the center of the object appears. Okay, so you always want this centered for a various amount of reasons. So hit Shift plus C. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to save a startup scene. But to me, this still isn't perfect. Let's go ahead and hit 1 on our number pad. Use your shift and middle mouse to make your cursor, your grid center, somewhere where I have it, like I have it right now. Make sure that you are in front ortho, as you can see up here. Hit T to open your tool shelf. And this is going to be our startup scene. That means that we're going to save this. So every time we open Blender, this is exactly what we have. We don't have to go to ortho, we don't have to go to front, we don't have to get rid of the timeline, we don't have to clear out our box, our light. and our camera, we are set to model the instant we open Blender. So let's go to File, and you will see Save Startup File. When you click on this, guess what you're going to get? A confirmation choice. Okay, Save Startup File, click Yes, and this is what we start up as. So you can close your Blender, reopen it, and it will be exactly as it is now. Alright, so that's going to be it for today. Make sure that you write down all of these things in a nice little list on a paper, and get your startup scene saved just right, and we will see you at the next tutorial. Please do make sure that you subscribe and like and share. Keep these tutorials coming by helping me out with those things. Thank you.